All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us via Zoom today. I know there's a lot of Zooms in our life, but we really appreciate this opportunity to share this project and this presentation with you. I will be moderating your session today. As I said, if you just came in, we will be using the Q&A feature on this webinar, which is a button at the bottom of your screen to gather questions and direct them to our panelists. I will be watching those questions come in throughout, so type a question in the chat window anytime it occurs to you. And once the presentation is done, we'll have a really good chunk of time set aside at the end for that Q&A and some more discussion between our panelists based on your questions. So to kick things off, I'd like to introduce myself and our panelists to go over a few items of business. I'm Bea Sanborn, DLR Group's Design Research Leader. I am an anthropologist, psychologist, and evidence-based design professional specializing in the built environment. In my work leading DLR Group's R&D studio, it's my goal to help researchers, designers, and clients bridge the gap between research and practice and find ways to integrate knowledge and information from both academic and practice-based research into all of our projects at one level or another. It's my great pleasure to interact with many of DLR Group's innovative projects and big thinkers from all parts of the projects, whether it's an architect or a high school student. These are the people that make change happen. I will be your moderator today, helping to guide the questions and discussions at the end of the panel, and it's my honor to do so. I'd like to introduce Jason Lemke. Jason had a hand in Canyon View from visioning and planning through design. He is a K-12 education leader at DLR Group, where he leads the Charlotte office. Jason's expertise in the planning and design of 21st century learning environments allow him to give great support and leadership to visioning and community engagement processes for school districts, securing funding, and creating successful roadmaps for the future. Jason's portfolio includes new school construction and facility modernizations and renovations for pre-K and K-8 schools, all the way up to major high school campuses. Jason is recognized as an innovator in education design and associates some of his favorite career memories with the process of creating and designing. According to Jason, and I think a lot of us would agree, it's the people in the process that make a project come to life. Although design can be timeless, it should adapt as the school evolves. Jason is a mentor to many of our young designers, challenging and provoking teams to arrive at new, progressive solutions that elevate education for students, teachers, and communities across the globe. Our second panelist today is Taryn Kinney. Taryn led the change and visioning process for Canyon View, titled Bridging Organization, Learning, and Design, or BOLD. Taryn is a native Texan who has successfully led the strategy, visioning, planning, and design of more than 2 million square feet of learning space nationally and internationally. She enjoys sharing her knowledge from her experiences and creating connections to implement exceptional learning environments. During Taryn's 15 years of developing facilities to support new educational models, she has seen clients face increasingly complex challenges. Taryn joins her clients in their journey to define unique responses to external and internal challenges through evidence-based practice. She incorporates current developmental research, environmental psychology, and organizational psychology to design facilities that respond to human learning and behavior. Taryn regularly presents to national audiences at industry events about visioning for student-centered and future-ready facilities. Our third panelist is Philip Nolan. Philip is the planning and founding principal of Canyon View High School, the newest innovative STEM-focused career pathways comprehensive high school in the Agua Fria Union High School District in Waddell, Arizona. Philip's background includes experience in curriculum development and delivery, professional development, diversity and inclusion, and human capital management. He began his career in education serving as a classroom teacher for 10 years. Following his time in the classroom, Philip was elevated to assistant principal and athletic director of Verrado High School in Buckeye, Arizona. And in 2014, he was promoted to executive director of human resources and benefits. In this role, Philip also served as the district administrator for athletics, activities, and Title IX compliance. And our final panelist is Jade Kane. Jade is a junior at Canyon View High School, where she is the student body president. In addition to her AP and honors courses, Jade participates in clubs and extracurricular activities, including Interact, Principals Advisory, and volleyball. During this webinar, Please submit your questions via the Q&A feature on Zoom, not the chat window, and we will have a great Q&A and discussion after the presentation. This presentation is eligible for AIA Continuing Education Credit. We'll be reviewing the process of creating a MacConnell Award-winning school that is truly a departure from facilities in its region, something innovative that creates a new home and culture for teaching and learning. During the presentation, you'll hear about community engagement, data-driven programming, research within and beyond the building design process, and how this project is viewed by students who attend this unique school. But first, we have a quick poll for you. We will have 2 questions appearing on your screen momentarily, because we would like to learn more about who you all are and how you're feeling about this concept of trying to really change and push a K-12 culture through design and culture change within the design process. All right, I see about half of y'all have voted, so I'll leave the poll up for just a little longer. I see, Vince, you've raised your hand. If you'd like to ask for some help via the chat window, you can chat to me and all of the panelists, or if you have a question, you can submit it through the Q&A window. It appears that some of you may be having trouble with the poll because the submit button is not lighting up. I apologize for that. I'm not sure what may be causing that, but there are 2 questions, so perhaps check and see if you've answered 2 questions. All right, I am going to end polling here. We've got about 70% of folks giving their answers, and the results should be sharing on your screen right now. It looks like we've got a lot of our fellow designers with us today, as well as some school administrators and a researcher to hang out with me. Thanks for being here today. We're excited to hear that a lot of you feel pretty confident about where you might embark on a big innovative change process for a district, and hope that our presentation today can bump everybody up 1 or 2 spots on this scale, so that you all would feel very confident if you were presented with an opportunity like this. Before I turn the microphone and mouse over to Jason Lemke, I am going to play a video for you all. So I will be looking to my fellow panelists to confirm for me momentarily that the sound is coming through your screens.
As we look at the landscape of education today, we realize that it's changing. So we were very intentional about the work for college and career readiness. This campus models the opportunity for students that are preparing for both worlds. So whether you're going to go straight into the workforce, whether you're going to go to college, this campus is designed to be supportive.
I think Canyon View really represents an incredible precedence and benchmark for the country. It celebrates the individuality of each student, but without sacrificing any of the rigor that's really required for a high school education today.
We've got a ton of diversity here at Canyon View High School. It's an interesting dichotomy between all of our students on campus, what they do, what they're involved in. We don't have any closed spaces. I tell our teachers all the time, if you're coming to a school where you can go into your classroom, close the door, teach for 8 hours, and then leave, that's not going to happen here. Our students and our teachers interact with each other so much because of the structure of the forts and the structure of the agora and the open spaces. You're going to be around different people and you're going to engage with them.
These forts are designed on a grid. This efficiency allows us to create the agile spaces, the different scales. It was really an opportunity to leverage space in a different way. Think about when you were a young child playing with your neighbors or your family. You wanted to build a fort. You grabbed some blankets, you grabbed some couch cushions and some pillows, and you made something in that moment. That's what we wanted this place to be. We wanted to be something in the moment.
I think like all the different classrooms, like that's so cool because it's not just the same classroom 5 different times, like all the hours of the day.
If you think about this project and you think about the infusion of technology, if you think about the learning spaces and the research that went into that, if you really begin to think about the depth of how this is sustainable into the future, you begin to understand that this project is unique and it's innovative and it really is something that's going to change the way that we teach.
We are a STEM-focused school, so we try to really integrate the engineering design process through all of our instruction. And so our teachers have really grabbed a hold of that. They've grabbed a hold of the building and the flexible ways that they can deliver instruction. They've been amazing in just finding different ways to really deliver the information to the students in a non-traditional format.
I taught in a traditional classroom setting for the last 8 years. And coming to Canyon View, I was a little nervous, I will admit, because I knew that I would have to give up that power of being able to go into a classroom, close my door. This is a student-centered environment, and that's what I wanted as a teacher. It's an environment of gratitude, and when you work in an environment like that, you feel happy to come to work. I wake up happy to come to work.
Throughout the course of the design, as we were working through the scope of the project, we were challenged collectively as a team to keep raising the bar. We're super proud of the product that's been produced. This is a tremendous value to the community.
Environmental stewardship has been a priority for the district for well over a decade. And the district was not interested in having a plaque on the wall. They were interested in finding something that is customized to their priorities and their values.
Leveraging this unique climate to new levels, we were tasked with creating space outside that could be leveraged for education. The Agora is really simply the tie that binds, and it works because of high-performance design.
We spend a lot of time coming up with a building that we think is super cool to look at, but it's also comfortable and it's functional. And the energy savings works for us and allows us to put more money into the teaching and learning.
This process was about planning for a vision. That vision became architecture and now transcends a simple collection of spaces. This place is Canyon View High School.
The one thing I'm confident about, this is the future of education. As we look at the landscape,
I love Zoom. Hopefully, you all empathize with our little technical glitches and things like that. Having been on many of these virtual sessions in the last 6 to 9 months, I'm sure that you do. If in fact you encountered any challenges in viewing the video, please know that it does exist on A4LE's website as a part of the MacConnell section. And you can go back and watch it at your leisure. So as B mentioned, good now afternoon. My name is Jason Lemke, and I'm going to take you through the chronological beginning of this process and project, and then we'll proceed down the line with Taryn and her work with the team, Philip, of course, and building culture, and Jade talking about the student experience. I want to begin with visioning and programming, and I empathize with those of you who answered the poll that you were mostly confident in your ability to tackle such an endeavor. Thinking about this project and where we began, I was remembering a dinner, and we had a small group of us. We had just commenced the work, and the conversation around the dinner table as we all got to know each other and build a collective context moving into this process was, do you want to innovate or do you want to replicate? And this question is not one to be taken lightly. I'm sure that we all have been through similar processes and, are expert in our planning craft, thinking about what it might mean for any district to go through a process such as this and not knowing perhaps what the end might be. And if I were to provide any words of encouragement for you all, it would be to consider your process that you know and perhaps practice frequently to be flexible, to allow the conversation to evolve with context as it comes, to allow folks to inquire about things that might not have been asked before in a safe and secure way. Anytime we consider change, we are all creating an aura of safety around that change and how we can all flourish in an environment of change. And that's really going to be consistent through our messaging today. I wanted to give a high-level overview of the schedule, the process that we went through. We began pre-design and visioning, indeed programming as well, with stakeholder engagement. Our process is one rooted in design thinking and empathy, and really sought to meet the challenge that the district had laid out. By the way, I didn't mention it, they answered that question, innovate and not replicate. And so the opportunity to go deeply into workshops, to work collaboratively with stakeholders, to set guiding principles, to eventually do some program data modeling, and really build some key charrettes around key topics, leading into a bold change process, which Taryn's going to talk about, and ultimately what exists today. This process began in earnest in 2015, late fall, early winter of 2015. And Philip, I believe that you are in your third year on campus. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. We opened in 2018 with a freshman-only class, and at this point in time, we now have juniors, which Jade is a junior, here on our campus. We're in our third year.
Thank you. We started in earnest asking broad questions, asking stakeholders who might be a little nervous about participating in a process that leads to an unknown outcome for their own experiences and reflect on that in a fun and exciting way. So we did simple exercises together. If I only knew then what I know now, and asked our participants to go back, you can see Philip in the photograph, to go back to their high school days and tell themselves, their younger selves, what they might do differently. And you can see on this windrose diagram, the dominant answer was to take risk, to push themselves. And we grabbed hold of that early on into the process. We accepted the risk that lie ahead in creating something that was new and different. We also asked for bold ideas, simple exercises. Community members participated in the process, as well as administrators and students, which you'll see in just a second, but asking them to come together and really challenge themselves to think about bigger potential through these ideas. And you can see that they affirmed the answer of innovation in their input. We spent some time, actually a significant amount of time, working with and understanding current practices. It allows us to provide a foundation of inquiry for future-based conversation that we wouldn't have if we were simply inferring from our own past experience. Every school district is unique. Every school is unique. And so we facilitated an exercise called the Learning Continuum. And so here you see a group of students, high school students in another campus, helping us understand how we might want to embrace some future context through some paired words. And so these continuums are drafted, and I'll explain how to read this complicated diagram. Simply, the present tense are the open outlined blue circles, and the desired future state are the filled circles. The diameter of the circle is indicative of more students. The larger the diameter, more students felt that way. The smaller diameter, fewer students felt that way. And we asked them to take these word pairs along a continuum and determine whether or not they perceived their current circumstances one way in the present tense and what it might be in the future tense. And essentially what arrives from a diagram such as this is the opportunity for expressed change. So if we think about going from one end of the continuum to another, from information mastery, to pick on one, to problem solving and critical thinking, this again resonates with the opportunity to create innovation and take risk. When it comes to our teacher friends, we did the exact same thing. However, and anecdotally, you may find this to be true, teachers perhaps are less, initially anyway, accepting of the opportunity for change from what they know. They're, like all of us, perhaps ingrained in our current circumstances, but they too had an expression of change, perhaps not the magnitude of students. And then we look for resonance. And this resonance between these two particular groups, our primary users, is the foundation by which we can begin our programming process. So you can see highlighted in the rectangles, those areas of resonance, and we've overlapped the two colors to illustrate how large a resonance existed between those. So things like student-centered, problem solving and critical thinking, flexible and adaptable spaces, all are hallmarks of the built environment that exists today. We spent some time, as I mentioned, shadowing students and classes. Specifically, we were intentional in doing so with a diverse group of students across multiple campuses. And in total, we logged more than 8 days of student activities, considering how they moved through the building, what activities and modalities occurred throughout their academic day, and began a foundation of data that allowed us to transition into a programming process, which I'll highlight in just a moment. But these day in the life exercises culminated in something that was more future focused. And as we look at our stakeholder groups being students in the top row, our teacher friends in the middle row, and our community members in the bottom row, and we create a matrix of information in the columns of focus, attributes, and programming KPIs, you can see that there was a lot of alignment amongst our stakeholder groups. The opportunity to create interdisciplinary spaces, the opportunity for ownership and exploration, freedom of movement were all things that we heard loud and clear through the process. That data is then captured and focused by course to understand across a spectrum of time, in this case, a week, what it might look like to participate in one of those courses, again, in a current and future context. We take that information and we place it into a data model that allows us to move students through time and space. It perhaps isn't readily apparent or evident to everyone that time is such a critical component in how big a facility is and the types of opportunities that are provided for students. And so Philip's going to talk a little bit about time and how it's influenced campus during his portion of the presentation. But just to say that there's course level specificity in the way that the program data model allows that choice to be expressed. And then we have the opportunity to come together as a group, and in this case at Canyon View, to modulate some of those key utilization variables, to think about class sizes, to think about how cohorts can move and come to a realization of how big a facility might need to be. So I'd like to move forward and talk about the design and some of the key design areas themselves. To give a high-level overview of campus, this is a site plan diagram outlining the community of buildings that exists along a central spine that is called the agora. And the agora is a Greek word for learning marketplace. You can see each one of the learning communities and then some of the more public buildings along the bottom or south edge. And then in the center is a special space called the accelerator. Actually, it's a suite of 3 spaces, and I'm going to talk about that in just a few minutes. So first, I want to talk about this key element of forts, and you heard it in the video, this idea of something that can be in the moment, something that can be constructed and deconstructed to scale space differently to suit learning as the need arises. This is the moment when the forts were born. You see, it wasn't us in a room by ourselves dreaming up what could be possible. It was the collective, the group of teachers and stakeholders in the room who said, let's accept the risk that we've said that we wanted. Let's embrace the innovation that lies ahead, and let's try something different. Each one of the fort spaces is divided and subdivided differently with 6 primary classroom spaces and 2 lab spaces and a central space, which is sort of in the minty green tone on your screen. Additionally, there's core space in each one of the forts to support our basic human needs, as well as mechanical systems. But what's special about these spaces is that the walls allow the balance of that space to be shifted at any moment. And so you can see in that brief animation how the color blocks shifted to support those sorts of activities. Now, we didn't diagram all of the potential options of how that works, but just to give you an idea of the flexibility that lives inside of each one of these buildings. "3D rendering visualizations of the similar spaces. You can see a view inside of the forts and how those spaces can shift, and then the realization of that. Sorry, one click too quick. The realization of that, and taken from a similar perspective, you can see how the forts present themselves today. You can see, in this case, one of the adults in the room monitoring and using the partitions, students collaborating in the background, but all of these learning labs splay along the south side of each fort. This is in the 6th classroom. Note that it doesn't have any fixed partitions. There is a space that's open for seminar. In this case, the curtains are a visual cue that a learning activity is happening on either side. So the curtains are closed depending upon what's happening during the day, or open to welcome all of the students into the fort into a central area. The lab spaces allow hands-on and applied learning. This is a STEM facility, as Philip can share more about in just a moment. And student collaboration happens throughout the day, even after school. And so the opportunity to have comfortable furniture, the opportunity for students to come and collaborate together was part and parcel to the success of these individual buildings. I want to touch briefly on another important element to this campus, and that's the accelerator. There was a courageous conversation that went on early on about the ability to really hone the art of teaching and providing a space that not only could be leveraged for professional development, workshop activities at large scale, as well as for student activities of all types. In fact, the accelerator today supports more than 150 individual activities through a suite of 3 spaces. The auditorium space, which you'll see on the right, including a flat floor and telescoping bleachers that can be moved out of that space and into what we call the white box space, the space in the middle. And then immediately to its north is the large gathering stair, whereby in front of that stair, large presentations can happen, or even events like robotics. Some imagery taken from the top of the learning stair looking back down at the accelerator, and then back up. Inside the white box, we have a a large skyfold door that facilitates indoor-outdoor interaction of these spaces. This is Arizona, and so the climate is a large factor in the design solution, but the operability and the functionality of these spaces and the ability for them to work together was critical. Inside the auditorium, you see the telescoping bleachers that can be collapsed and moved out of the space to create a flat floor environment for workshop activities. And before I turn it over to my colleagues, I wanted to touch just briefly on budget. It is a question we get often. If you're asking yourself, well, how much does this cost, and did they go through any value engineering as we know it? The answer to both of those questions is on this slide. In the photograph in the upper right, we spent a significant amount of time managing the budget throughout the process. It wasn't about the materiality in creating a facility that was uniquely different. It was about exemplifying the academic spaces and how they function together. So the budget, as you can see on screen, $294 a square foot. Multiple phases of construction were actually consolidated into a singular phase to facilitate actually a savings, a cost savings. So with that bit of information, Taryn.
Okay. I'm gonna request control here. Okay, so you've seen all the good stuff and the long process that really happened to develop the design for the school. We actually started working with Philip and his team during construction. And the reason, oops, let's see, how do I advance here, y'all? Anybody? Oh, there they go. There. Couldn't get them to show up. Okay, so the reason that we started working with the team is really kind of shown on this slide here. So for all the architects in the room and maybe some of the school administrators, we've all experienced this, I think, when there's been a grand vision, an idea about changing behaviors, going from a teacher-centered environment to a learner-centered environment, like Jason showed on his dot diagram that you saw earlier. Oftentimes those shifts don't actually occur, and the black and white images are actually our projects that we've gone back and seen after they're occupied and breakout space is not utilized, or a small group room maybe is locked and is used for storage. So we developed the service called BOLD to avoid that situation and really to bridge the gap from the vision to the actual implementation. And this is our ethos. We really do believe that educators and learners deserve the best environment to try new experiences, right? To build skills, to contribute to their communities, and ultimately find individual fulfillment. So this is a broad, lofty goal that every user that goes into a DLR group building, whether it's an educator or a learner, can find their individual fulfillment, whatever that means to them. But this is our goal, and this is why my team wakes up and goes to work every morning. And we've also formed this because of this situation, I guess I would say. We've all seen schools in pockets or in isolated situations that are doing amazing things in terms of teaching and learning, but it hasn't really happened at a systematic level yet. And it's partly because of this stat, because 70% of change efforts fail. So we're here trying to change that statistic. And this is what BOLD stands for, if anybody's wondering. We intentionally bridge departments. We bridge those silos that you guys see between facilities and academics. We also bridge vertically, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. I am an organizational psychologist, so we help the campus team build the organizational systems to support the changes they want to see. We define a new vision for learning, and Jason's spoken to this quite a bit already, and then we align the environmental design to support the learning that you want to see. So that's kind of holistically what BOLD stands for. This is our team. We have an interdisciplinary team. We have career educators, Marilyn and Emily, that have led transformation, both in their district in Marilyn's instance and on her campus in Emily's situation. And then Rachel is a researcher, specifically looking at how teachers transition to new environments. And then I bring the kind of designer and organizational psychologist role to this. And this is how, this is the approach we bring. So I know there have been some questions about change processes already. This is a formula from a social psychologist. And basically it's saying that you have to do these three things in order to overcome the cost of change. Okay, so Jason talked a lot about his process and the process we went through. Part of that study of the current state is really understanding what's working and what's not working, but really understanding, communicating the dissatisfaction then creates that why do we need to change, and really creates that buy-in to the whole team on why should we take this risk to change, right? You then have to provide the vision. And again, Jason has already shown this. There were a lot of very lofty goals and clear vision for the future. But what we oftentimes miss in an architecture process in particular is the change process. So all of that has to be in alignment in order to get past that cost of change that everybody has. So this is what the BOLD process looks like. It's a 5-step process. It's actually based on an organizational model for organizational performance. And so there, all of that is kind of the background on how we structure our process, but we've laid it out in these simplified steps so it's easy to understand. And part of what we're doing here is working not only at the organizational level, so the district and the campus, but also at that individual level. And that's what I was saying about bridging the gaps vertically. We all know that most people are resistant to change. Well, really that is about a fear of the unknown, okay? So a lot of what we're doing is working with the leadership team on a campus to fill, I call them buckets, to fill those buckets of unknown with knowns. And then helping them communicate that to the individuals, to the teachers and the staff that are going to be on their campus, and say, I know you're scared about this, but this is what it's going to look like, and this is your role in it. And then we work with those individuals to really build their capabilities so they really can own these things even before they move into the campus. So what does that look like? So we start with Discover. This is about external environments and pressures to change, et cetera. But in this particular situation, one of the things we see a lot is a disconnect between the district level and the campus level. The vision may not be communicated. Sometimes we see it go the other way around, where you have a principal who's a really clear idea on what they're doing, but it may not align with the district initiatives. And if you have either of those things, it's not going to work sustainably over time. So in this activity, Philip and his team was able to take all the district priorities, you see the cards there, and all of their own goals in their campus and align those things so that they could have support moving forward. We then kind of jumped to the end, if you will, and we asked Philip and his team to develop a learner profile. Imagine this. What are your learners going to achieve? What are their skill development going to be when they, not only when they graduate from Canyon View, but as they move through Canyon View? And so this is kind of starting with the end in mind and then back planning from there. Once we have that learner profile, the team really looks at these 3 different components, developing the guiding purpose and goals. The cultural expectations and practices and the academic expectations and practices are a huge piece, and they quite honestly take a lot of time to develop, but it's crucial to the success. So one of the things that's really unusual in school design, I'm going to take a minute to, this is separate from Canyon View, any high school you open, you go from not existing one day to opening your doors. And in Philip's case, he opened with a freshman class, but oftentimes high school will open with 2 classes. Sometimes they open with all 3, it kind of depends. But you go from not existing one day to opening your doors with 500 to 2,000 students. In this case, I'll call them clients, and a staff of maybe 50 to 100 and 150 educators. You never see that in the business world. You don't open a business and on day one you have 1,000 clients and 100 employees, but you do in schools. So it's very important ahead of time to define what you want in terms of the culture and very clearly communicate what you want to see, which are the practices, so that you have the culture that you want. I'm going to pause a minute here because I know Philip's going to talk to culture in the next section, but I wanted him to kind of share with you a little bit about this process because this is a really important part of the process.
Thank you, Taryn. And good morning, everyone. I appreciate you being here to kind of hear our story. It's been a long journey. I've been a part of the process since 2015, and you saw some of those pictures. I think I was about 20 or 30 pounds lighter in those pictures. So the years and the age has put some pounds on and a little more gray in my beard. But I'm really excited about the work that we've done here at Canyon View High School. When you talk about the BOLD process, and Taryn talked about this in some of her previous slides, when you talk about the vision and the visioning piece. And I know there's a question about, change management and culture, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But essentially, whether you come in with a vision, a clear vision, or your vision is not necessarily all that clear, the BOLD process was able to help us sift through that and really organize our ideas and thoughts around what does this school or campus look like. Not only what do we want to, what do we want our practices to be? What do we want our expectations to be? But also, what do we want our outcomes to be? And so I tell my staff all the time that, we need to enjoy the process. The journey is much more important sometimes than the actual outcome. And if we focus on the process and the journey, we'll get there. But what BOLD was able to do is really give us that framework and that guidance and challenge us as school leaders to really look at, you want to have a beautiful campus. Well, what does that mean and what does that look like? And what are the things that you're going to do? What are the things that their students are going to do? And what is the staff going to do? So as you look at this slide right here, when it talks about cultural expectations or practices and academic expectations and practices, it's not enough just to have goals or expectations that are broad. You have to really dive down into the finer details of what you want that to look like and what individuals are actually going to be doing. And that gives staff and leaders a much more clear vision, and they can picture what we can picture when it comes to your school campus. And that can happen whether it is a brand new campus in my situation, or when I talk to other leaders at other campuses that come and see our facility who are doing a rehab or a change in their culture or change in their physical footprint to reflect more of what we have. It's the same process. It just sometimes may take a little bit longer when you're talking about existing ideas, existing culture that you need to change.
Thank you, Philip. And just to be clear for those that are viewing the slides, these are just snippets of the process, right? The learner profile wasn't just one thing. There's not just one cultural expectation. But one of the things Philip mentioned is really that driving down into the practices. Marilyn, one of our educators, always says, teachers want to do the right thing. They want to do what their leaders are asking of them, but they need that defined for them, especially when there's a change involved, especially when they haven't done it before. Because if you don't, again, fill in those gaps of the unknown, they're going to fall back to what they know. That's natural. So I just wanted to point out an example here under project-based learning. The first bullet says evidence of this learning can be seen through minimum of 2 projects per quarter. This was the goal that was set at the beginning. Philip and his team didn't come in and say, okay, everything is going to be project-based learning. You may not have done this before, but every single lesson is going to do this. And if you don't, we're going to have a problem, blah, blah. No, that wasn't the expectation. The expectation was 2 projects per quarter. And this is key guidance from the educators on our team that have done this before. And they can ask Philip those questions, they can push his team, and they can really say, like, yes, this is manageable. This is a manageable transition, or maybe you need to back off on this one, or maybe you need some more specificity on this one. So that it's really just professional coaching through this process based on both research as well as experience. So that, if I can get this thing to forward again, which takes a minute for some reason. There we go. Okay, so then once you've developed the transformational parts of the framework, then you dive into what we call the transactional, and this is kind of the nitty-gritty, developing the policies. How is the campus going to be organized and function? The procedures get down to that individual level of an individual teacher. What you're seeing here is a master schedule mapping exercise. So their master schedule is on the screen in the back, and their plan is on the table, as you can see. They actually were placing students represented with little pieces of paper according to the master schedule that's up on the wall. And so this was allowed them to really think through that learner experience, think through when teachers had off periods, if they really were able to do their PLCs that have their planning time across disciplines. And this was really a learning experience for Philip's team, especially because you saw Philip go through the process designing the school, but his team didn't get that opportunity. So they hadn't gone through all of that kind of divergent thinking, seeing examples of other schools doing new and different things. So this process was them really getting their heads around these new ideas and really thinking through how it was going to be implemented, because the folks in the room are the ones responsible for implementing. So this was a really important process for them to kind of create their own understanding and buy-in around these new initiatives. Real quick, Philip, anything you want to add on that one?
Yes, Taryn. You know, this was in the trailer. This was outside when everything was dirt and construction, and we were working with our team. And one of the things that was really profound for me as an educator is, you know, and I saw a lot of you guys are architects and designers. You know, as educators, I think there's only 3 of you in the room. We just think differently. Like I had to learn a new language or a different language going into this process and the planning process. And what this did that was really eye-opening for me and my team is we actually, you usually put a master schedule together based on what teachers are going to teach. And you're really just thinking about who's going to teach how many sections of history, right? That's master scheduling from an educator's point of view. What this process allowed us to do is really look at how are they going, and Jason had lent itself to this earlier in his part, how are they going to use the campus and the spaces? How are we going to program or put together a master schedule that really is most effective, not just in who's going to teach what, but who's going to teach what, when, where, and how that impacts what other teachers are teaching, so that we can ensure that all teachers have an opportunity to truly utilize the campus as an entire learning space. So one of the things at Canyon View that we do is we don't regulate our teachers to just teaching in your classroom. We don't even call them classrooms, we call them learning labs. And what we do is we promote and in essence, really push and challenge our teachers to utilize various spaces around the campus to deliver instruction. And one of the ways that we do that is that we encourage and require, I like to say expectations over forcing, but we have expectations that teachers rotate every week, and they rotate to a different space that has a different set of furniture and has a different landscape. What this does is this allows us to truly promote a differentiated education model, a differentiated instructional delivery model that we know is what's best for kids. And so that changing of the landscape, that changing of the mindset allows our teachers to really be creative and inventive about what they're trying to do when they're delivering different types of content levels. So this process allowed us to really kind of connect that idea of, yes, we want problem-based learning and project-based learning and those types of things. We want people to use the campus, but how do we get them to do it? And this process allowed us to kind of figure that out and put that together.
Thank you. Okay, and last but not least, how do you measure the achievement if you've actually achieved the goals you want to achieve? So this is a process where the team develops success metrics. One of the things I found in my graduate research was when you have a new campus with new expectations for a new learning model or different behaviors, it's pretty stressful, right? There's a lot to do. And every teacher that I interviewed in that process, they told me, this has been a great process, but I'm never going to do it again. And so that information really led into this process where really change is a 5-year process. It doesn't happen immediately. And while there are things you need to implement on day one, there are also things that you can transition into, especially in a situation like this where you're starting with freshmen. There are things you're not going to achieve until they graduate, right? But in year one in particular, and where a lot of the stress was coming from in my research was they didn't have any of the typical success metrics. They don't have test scores that they can look at because that doesn't come out until the following year. So really defining what you want to see and how you define success. All of us, most educators will say test scores are not the way I want to be judged. Well, if you don't say how you want to be judged, then test scores is what people are going to look at, right? So all of these different components came from Philip and his team. We actually started with year 5, said what long-term would you want? And then again, kind of back plan, kind of took those down for year 1 and year 2, et cetera. So this is a great tool, and then something that Philip can, evaluate each year. And I think he's even talking about updating not only some of these, but some of the expectations, because those are things once you're in a couple of years, you learn what's working or maybe what needs to be enforced a little bit differently. So obviously this is not a fixed framework. It's one that gets updated and changed with the life of the building and the people in the building. Real quickly, I will just share some of the measurements that we've seen on this campus. We have 2 tools, the student engagement tool, student engagement index, and teacher engagement index. And we've really seen some positive statistics and positive data out of this campus in particular. The percentages you see are this campus compared to all the other DLR group schools that have taken the same survey, but have not gone through the BOLD process. So very positive outcomes, not claiming that that's due to BOLD alone. It's all combined with the design and the leadership and all of the kind of incredible culture that Philip has created. But it also has a correlation with BOLD on this one. So we are excited to see those. We also can look at it in this way. So we did a pre-occupancy with Philip's team when they were coming into their freshman year, which you see on the left, and then on the right, the same group of students took this in their spring semester of freshman year. And this is a question we ask that is basically worded, what do you perceive your school values? And there are all these options. What we have found is that when the answers come back that collaboration, critical thinking, creativity is the highest rank for what the school values, that's tied to higher student engagement. So some great findings here. Students believe that testing was the highest valued in their previous campus, which was when they were in 8th grade at another school district altogether. And that, as you can see, dropped down to the bottom ranked. So it's very clear from Canyon View that they value all these other things more. Collaboration jumped up, creativity jumped up. So there's just a lot of positive things you're seeing here. Hands-on work jumps up. This belonging to the school community, I will leave on this one because this ties directly into the culture piece. So great statistics, great findings on this, and it comes through in many ways. So with that, I'll turn it over to Philip.
All right, thank you, Taryn. So I know I saw that there's a number of questions. I'm excited to get to some of the questions in the Q&A. So I've got to, be patient and wait, but I'm excited to answer some of those questions because I think there's a lot of things that are going on at Canyon View High School that are positive. But obviously we have our challenges like every school in the nation right now with COVID going on. But to talk a little bit about school culture is important. It is, to me, it is one of the biggest things, if not the biggest piece of what we do at Canyon View High School and what we're trying to attain. And Jade, one of our students, is going to have opportunity to talk a little bit about how the student experience and culture relates to her. But it's vital that we believe that teachers and students need to feel good about the place that they're at. And I think that's simple. I think that's easy. That's something that probably translates to every other workplace, right? If you have happy employees, you have people that are excited about being there, they're going to want to come to work, they're going to work harder, they're going to work longer for less. Because they're excited and they're happy to do that. Well, we know in education that educators do not get paid at a very high level. So they have to do it because of the passion, because of the students and what they want to do for students and the impact that you have in those lifelong relationships you develop. And so as a result, to connect it to our presentation, it really is the physical space and design of the building has helped with that. What we've done is through this process is really tried to create an environment that focuses on a culture that supports all student needs. And so when you look at that, a lot of schools, or a lot of times we really focus on the top 20%. We wanted to ensure that all of our students, regardless of where they come from or where they're at, what base they start on, socioeconomic status, whether they're ELL or ESS, whatever challenges they have, that they had a school and a building that was going to facilitate an opportunity for all of them to be engaged at the level that they wanted to be in, and even kind of push them to the next level in a safe way. And so the building allows us to do this. We talked about a couple things, STEM and career pathways. We're a STEM-focused school. We have career pathways, 6 different career pathways, from graphic design, marketing, medical sciences, agriculture, coding and computer programming, which also bridges with our STEM. And so those are, in graphic design and film and TV. And so our students have opportunities to be involved in all those different areas. And with our STEM focus, we're really trying to push our students to think about problems or projects and try to really go through the design process to understand not only just answering the question, but understanding the why behind it and how to navigate through those situations. And we think that's going to help our students to be better thinkers and to be more college and career ready. So on this slide right here, you see provide authentic learning experiences for all students in a collegiate and professional environment. That is our vision. And so here at Canyon View High School, what you see some students here working in a science space. You see some students working here in graphic design. And so we try to start our students very early at the freshman level, opportunities to go into those pathways, opportunities to truly be engaged in what we're doing on our campus. One of the things that really, to me, shows the culture that we have on our campus is that over 70%, closer to 75% of our students are involved in some co-curricular. And that's a club or a athletic program. And we call them co-curriculars because we believe, and research shows, that students who are involved in something outside of the classroom, outside of the normal day, are inherently more successful. They feel more connected to the school. They feel more connected to the community. They have higher academic achievement, and that's regardless of where they start off at. And so we felt that that was a big piece of the culture and climate that we used here. And when Jason talked about the spaces and the intentional design behind the spaces, that was one of the pieces that we discussed and talked about, is how do we utilize the spaces to ensure that we can support students in a variety of different career paths, but also activities. Here, this is one of my favorite slides. The one on the left, that's me, that's at our pep rally. That was probably our best pep rally. Jade probably can agree that was one of our best pep rallies, and that was right before COVID hit. Literally, that's like Friday, and then Saturday I have to have a meeting and we're not coming back to school. So it was a great moment. If we're going to end off any note in person for that year, that was the way to do it. You see some other pictures here. You see the masks on. That's our JV cheer team practicing using proper health and safety measures. Our band, we have an outstanding band. And then that's just our pink out game for breast cancer awareness and a bunch of kids. And Jay was a part of that as student government, kind of doing that as a promotional. We let them throw the powder in the air, hypoallergenic, because we are cognizant of the environment and people around us. But that was a really, really fun night. And so it's just, it's exciting to be here at Canyon View High School with the climate and culture that we have. And we do believe that the design and the mindset, all the things that we talked about from the design through BOLD and the process has contributed to the outcomes that we have today. So this is, I'm going to pass this on. So this is the student experience. And so this is where Jade's going to talk a little bit about the student experience at Canyon View High School, some of the things that she's seen. Jade, I'd like for you to talk a little bit about where you came from and kind of your decision to even come to Canyon View High School. And then, you know, just all about the student experience as you see it and how design has really connected that for you.
Hi, everybody. I'm very thankful to be here with all of you guys. So from my background, I came from the Liberty Elementary School District. So that is not like a feeder school from Canyon View or the Agua Fria District whatsoever. But I found a pamphlet about Canyon View in 8th grade. And I saw all the opportunities that it had. I like changes, and I thought that a change would be very great for me. And it seemed very different, even with the design. I was and still am very interested in architecture. So I really liked how our school system was starting to change, because everything that everyone was used to was basic white walls, chairs that were difficult to sit in for too long, or anything like that. But Canyon View is completely different, where it had open spaces, different colored chairs, comfortable chairs, whiteboard tables to where we can write down anything we need. And so when I decided to come here, it was probably one of the best decisions I have ever made. And the opportunities I was right about, I probably have gotten every opportunity, and there's still so much more that I can accomplish. But just everything, especially with the survey on the student perspectives, I was one of the students who had put testing as more important than creativity, mentally challenging, or mentally thinking. And also at collaboration. And by the end of the year, I had put collaboration as the most important, especially with challenging myself and creativity. Because by the end of the year, all of our teachers even learned that collaborating was one of the most important things that we can do at the school. Also, later I learned on that the better connections that you have, the more opportunities you can receive. So I collaborated a lot in student government, which made the best assembly before COVID hit, and also the pink out game. So yeah, that's mostly about it. I mean, the collaboration, it was really important to me, and especially taking all these honors and AP classes, my teachers and even the environment there taught me that I really do need to challenge myself to become better. And that if I keep pushing myself and I keep collaborating with people and I keep challenging myself and I think more out of the box, then I can really succeed.
Thank you so much, Jade, for being with us today on the panel to share your perspective. I know we've got a lot of great questions coming in through the chat, so we will start that chat. We'd like to hear from you even throughout the Q&A. We've got a pretty great chunk of time left here to talk with you. I'll answer just one business-related question up front first. Someone asked about the slides being available after the seminar. This seminar is being recorded, so you will have access to that recording when the webinar is complete. I would like to start by asking Jason and Philip to answer two kinds of questions that we often get when we're talking about Canyon View. And I'm going to stop the screen share so we can see all your nice faces. Jason and Philip, can you talk a little bit more about the costs for the school? Jason, we got some questions about a little more of a cost breakdown. Were the budgets that you showed site cost, and can you talk about the capacity that the school was designed for? And Philip, we've got some people curious to hear a little bit more about how you met those costs.
Well, thank you all for your time and attention so far. We are looking forward very much to this dialogue period. Every time we have the opportunity to come together and present on this campus, the dialogue that we are able to engage with attendees in is always exciting. So we do often get this question about cost. The cost that we shared earlier was inclusive of site-related development. You know, value engineering was a part of the process. It's kind of a dirty word in the industry, right? It means that you're going to remove value from the school. And we didn't see it that way. We had a direct correlation between innovation and cost, and I'll explain. At one point in the process, early on, we were substantially over budget. The district had funds through a bond program to support what they believed to be the first phase of construction. And the plan originally was to actually just shell out or build the outer shell of a few of the forts. And through the process, we realized that we could externalize a significant portion of square footage through the collective ownership that we've spoken about through the presentation, being that there aren't owned classrooms. There aren't, you know, just a singular space that an individual is responsible for. They're collectively responsible for an entire campus. And that meant that we could go outside. And if you think about the climatology of Phoenix, Arizona, or just west of Phoenix, Arizona, where the campus sits, that's a pretty incredible thing to do. So the sustainability component of this made that programmatic innovation possible to externalize on the order of about 65,000 square feet of interior space that we didn't have to build because we could make the exterior space valuable for instruction. Even to the point where we were monitoring wind speed through the Agora to the point where papers wouldn't blow off the desk or the lap of a student. So the intensity of the high performance design solution was part and parcel to the budget savings that we were ultimately able to realize. And through the combination of phase 1 and phase 2 construction, including all the site amenities, we were able to realize some labor savings as well. So campus came in as planned, on budget. And so, Philip, if you want to tackle the other component, that would be great.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. You know, we talked about the price tag around $73 million. And, you know, Jason showed that picture about $22 million over budget. And every time I see that, I remember that meeting. I remember the cuts that were made. But I think, to Jason's point, I think no one would know if you were to walk up. I know because I was involved in that process. Jason knows, you know, we know. But, you know, Jade and all the students, you would never walk through our campus and even know that and see that. We have so many different opportunities and so many different things. Our pathways are really focused. I mean, they look like real professional spaces. I've had people come and look at our TV film studio and they're like, this is better stuff than we have at our actual TV studio. So they're almost like, instead of showing your kids how to work this, how about your kids show us? And so that's what it's been all about. But to really answer the question, you had a breakdown of really, in the state of Arizona, it had been, I think, over 10 years since the state of Arizona, the School Facilities Board, had funded a brand new school in Arizona. And so we actually, this process was really really, really arduous. But we were 3 students. We got the funding by 3 students. And so we passed a bond. It was the largest bond in the history of our district. So $40 million were based on a voter bond. And the school facilities board kicked in about approximately $33 million. I may be off by a couple dollars, but about $33 million was kicked in by the school facilities board so that we could do a 1-phase build out. And so that was really instrumental because the schools in our district have previously been multi-phases. I've been a part of a new school build at one of our schools in our district as a teacher. And to always have construction on your campus for about 5-6 years and always saying, well, we're going to get a second gym, you just have to wait, is frustrating. And so the opportunity to be able to do this in a 1-phase build out with all the bells and whistles that we have was really tremendous.
Thank you. We have a couple quick follow-up questions. Jason, when was the project bid and what was the delivery method? Was it CM at risk?
Yes, you saw Barry Chase in the video. Barry's president of Chase, and he was part and parcel to the success of the project as well. And I would advocate for any out there who have an opportunity to bring their construction partner on as soon as possible in a design process, having them integrally involved, it really proved to be an asset when we were having to make some of those key challenges or meet some of those key challenges on cost. Barry was in the room with us saying, okay, I'm going to roll up my sleeves and help figure out the best way to get this done because the vision was apparent. And so CM at risk was the delivery method. It was bid, I want to say it was bid in 2016, but I would have to double check my numbers on that, exactly what month.
And Philip, we've got a question too, just kind of knowing that costs are relative by region. Right. How does that cost per square foot at Canyon View compare to other schools in the region?
So there's a couple other schools that have been built recently because there's a huge amount of growth in Arizona. I don't know if you guys have heard, but Arizona is one of the states that has some of the largest growth in the nation right now, in Maricopa County. And so there's been some school districts next to us that have opened brand new schools, and we are still lower per square foot than those schools. And those schools are a little bit more traditional. So you have one school that was open that was really big, but it was very much traditional. And that was a $120 million price tag down the road. And then there was another school on the other side of the valley that was opened that is kind of the middle between us. It took some of our design concepts, but still some traditional concepts. And even the cost per square footage was well over $300 per square foot versus the $294 number that you saw that Jason presented.
Thanks. And for those of you who do have to leave at the top of the hour, this recording will be available to you after the webinar is complete. We've got some questions around security, but I think I'm going to start by asking Taryn about change, because the change and culture conversation at Canyon View is really inextricably linked to the questions of sense of belonging and sense of security. Taryn, for architects, this question seems to come from an architect. When you have a client and you sense that there's an opportunity for a big change process with them, or maybe they sense there's an opportunity for a big change process, how do you suggest that to them and broach the topic of change when it may not even seem to exist within their culture? How do you start that conversation?
So I would say the first step is the pre-planning part that Jason covered, right? The uncovering the dissatisfaction. And sometimes you have to dig for that a little bit. There are a lot of high-performing districts out there that say, my kids are graduating, they're going to college, we're doing just fine. But if you dig into that a little bit, if you talk to your students, you can start to find, and even if you talk to professional organizations, you'll start to find that there are some real challenges. So that's kind of the first step. But if a part of the district is on board with change and wanting different outcomes, and it's more of a question around the change management process, or the change process itself, this is something you have to educate them about a little bit. This is not something that schools and educators learn about. I talked about this a little bit internally. Philip's an amazing leader. You guys can probably tell that just the way he talks about his school and his learners and his staff. But he hasn't been trained in change processes. That's not his expertise. That's no educator's expertise, right? So bringing them information about that, the formula that I shared, the articles about change processes, sharing with them how other organizations have changed, whether those are commercial or industry or institutions, academic institutions. And once you start that conversation, I think Philip went through a little bit of a process with us. I think when we first started, he didn't know why we were there. And I think he thought, I have this covered. I have this huge opportunity. I'm going to do all these great things. And he would have moved forward and done a lot of great things, I believe. However, we were there to kind of hold his hand in the best and most positive way and ask him the questions that would arise eventually, but we were able to ask them ahead of time and again challenge his group to figure out what they wanted to do before they hit the situation in real life. So it's not an easy answer, but it is a process, and it requires some education and then just the support, the follow through and support.
Thanks. So now I will turn to one of the questions that we frequently get during Canyon View presentations, which is around safety and security. We saw a lot of visibility. We saw a lot of open spaces and large roll-up doors. And I'd like to direct this question to all four of you, because one version that came in was how do teachers, students, and parents feel about this open concept with regard to current ideas around school safety and current security concerns. Philip, I'll invite you to start, but I think we'd be interested in hearing from all four of you.
Yeah, so I'm, we're going to do a little popcorn here, right? So I'm going to start a little bit, but then Jade, just to let you know, I'm going to tag you next. People ask that all the time. And I literally just did a tour with a school district who was asking about that. And I got a phone call from another school, another principal who was asking about that because she's leading a school that has gone through a significant change in the design. Most of your threats, over 95% of school threats come from inside. And that generally is around climate and culture. It is students or teachers, staff members that are upset, disgruntled, come back and shoot up a school. That's typically what happens when we're talking about safety and security. So we feel that at Canyon View, we're really trying to focus on the climate and culture. And if we can focus on people that enjoy their job, that love doing what they're doing, that understand the vision and are committed to the vision, that we, and students that don't fall between the cracks. Students that feel like they have an adult advocate, they have someone, they have a support, they have their own tribe, they feel connected to the school, that will reduce or mitigate that threat. Other than that, one of the things that you don't see on the video, but you see when you're here, is that we have gates around the entire campus. They're very aesthetically pleasing, but they're 12-foot gates and you can't even climb the gates. We have 100 cameras on campus. We do have procedures that we put in place for safety and security. We have campus safety monitors. We don't have a lot of blind spots. Students typically don't do things they're not supposed to do if they know that there's eyes on them. And one of the things that I can tell you is that because most of our learning labs have either movable clear walls or they don't have walls at all, it is really easy from a supervisory perspective. Also, it creates a culture of kids and students understanding how to respect other people's spaces. When you can't yell and scream when the doors are open. And so a lot of our safety and security measures are tied to our processes, procedures. We do have lockdown drills and those types of things to try to provide that comfort. But at the end of the day, we've had police officers, we've had Homeland Security come and look at our building, and they're actually impressed with how our building has been set up from a safety security standpoint, even though we have so many collaborative spaces. And so I'm going to popcorn it to Jade and you talk about a little bit about how do you feel student perspective, because we've had these discussions in my principal's advisory committee, which is Jade is a part of.
Yeah, so that was one of my concerns when I was a freshman and I had asked Mr. Nallen, and he answered very well. I think he gave me different perspectives on how we were completely safe, especially since we have so many windows that even if anything was suspicious, anyone is able to see. Everything is so open that there isn't really a place for anyone to hide. And even if someone did come onto campus or someone was potentially holding a weapon, um, the the forts are made to where it's kind of difficult to find a way to kind of target a certain atmosphere because there is no place to where they could really attend or be around to look for a target. And also as well, talking about the community, we've worked very well on that. I mean, me being in principal's advisory and Stugo, I'm able to talk to Mr. Nallen about things that we should work on or how to make our community better. And I give that to my Stugo students, and I tell them things that we should work on if anyone seems to be falling behind. You know, it's our job to go up to them and see how they're feeling, if they need any help, if we can encourage them to do anything. So everything is, I mean, perfectly safe, fine. We've never had any problems, and students ask me questions sometimes about the security, and they're constantly reassured that everything is okay. So Jason, your mic is off, so if you'd like to talk.
Yeah, I think you both answered the question really well. I would just reiterate some of the things that Philip had mentioned, and in the interest of time, I think I'll avoid doing that. But you know, safety and security is a behavior as much as it is anything else, and the physical hardening of a facility is initially important, but not the thing that makes a difference ultimately in the end.
Great. In the interest of time, Philip, we do have one question I want to make sure we answer because I know it's an important issue for all of us. How do you handle special education with this kind of open, flexible plan, and how are students integrated into the population versus isolated or separated when they need to be?
No, great question. Just a reference to security, we also have lockdowns, places where I can lock down the building and lock down the forts at any point in time where someone can't get in. That's just the FYI. And there's only one entrance into the school during the day, and people are required to go through a Raptor system where they put their ID in, and we ensure that they can be around students, and they have to wear a sticker with their face on it. So if your ID is from 20, 30 years ago, that's the face that we're going to see. But in Arizona, you get your IDs for about 50 years. But to answer the question about special ed, exceptional student services. So we have 2 self-contained programs on our campus. Those students, one of is our functional skills, which are students who are wheelchair bound and need one-on-one care. We also have students who have autism and those types of things that are sometimes mainstreamed in 1 or 2 classes a day, or sometimes they're in their life skills the entire day. So number one, we have the largest group of unified sports in the state. And so our unified sports program is where you have gen ed students like Jade working with ESS students. And so we try to develop those relationships so they're a part of everything that we do. They're at the pep rallies, they're at the dances, those types of things. So we try to create a culture of inclusivity so that students don't ever, regardless of who the student is, if they're being pushed at their wheelchair around campus, kids are saying hi and being welcoming and those types of things. As far as educationally or academically, one of the things that we do is we have a co-teaching model here at Canyon View High School. And so if you're not familiar with the co-teaching model, it's where students who have an IEP are in gen ed classes, but we may have a parapro or we have a co-teacher in that class. And so that's how we support them academically here. And that's not just at Canyon View, but in our district. But I hope that kind of answers the question.
Thanks, Philip. And speaking of co-teaching and other teaching practices, our last question is for Taryn and Philip. Taryn, what is the teacher prep space like here, and how does it link, Philip, to your kind of process for having teachers develop together and plan their teaching?
Yeah, so there are 4 teacher planning areas on the ground level, and it supports not only the teachers that are up in the forts, but also the teachers that are on the ground level, the CTE and fine arts and other electives. There's a desk in there for each teacher. There are some small telephone rooms so that they can have some privacy if they need it. There's a kitchenette space and some, a small collaboration table kind of thing. So it's really meant to provide all, and I believe there are also lockers so they can lock up their personal belongings if they need to while they're moving around. So it's really meant to be the kind of one-stop shop for anything a teacher would need in terms of a professional space. But it's also, and Philip can speak to this, they specifically located teachers in those 4 spaces depending on their professional learning groups. And those are interdisciplinary and includes the elective folks. So there's some real intentionality, and it's shown, the research shows that when teachers don't own their spaces, they collaborate more, they build stronger relationships, they know more about their learners because they have conversations about how this one's doing or that one's doing, and they can support them cross-curricularly. So Philip, if you can provide any more detail to that'd be great.
Yeah, no, what we do is each fort is a grade level fort. And so and then at the bottom of you saw the upstairs spaces that are open where the teachers rotate. And then the downstairs spaces, we have either an art or a CTE program that's at the bottom of each space. And so that's how we group our teachers. And so they're having grade level conversations. When you look at PLC, which is professional learning communities, and you look at the research that supports PLCs, essentially the research says that teachers who are teaching the same subject at the same grade level, when they are collaborating with each other, that's when you're going to see the greatest gains in academic performance for those students, because they're actually being able to say, this is what's working for my kids, this is not what's working for my kids. They share that data, collaborate, and then move forward. And one of the things that our teachers say is, as a result of the faculty spaces and the fact that they don't own those spaces, they actually know more teachers on campus, and they never collaborated more in their life, in their teaching career. Like I said in the video, you don't come here going to your learning lab, close the door, and are by yourself for 8 hours and then leave. That's impossible. And for students, it's great because students know teachers that aren't even their teachers, and vice versa, as a result of the collaborative spaces.
And with that, we will do you the Zoom favor of ending on time today. Thank you to all 4 of our panelists, and Philip and Jade, thank you so much for being here to talk about your school. To everyone in our audience, thank you for listening and asking great engaged questions. It's always fun to talk about this project and always fun to hear the new kinds of questions people ask. We hope you have a wonderful holiday season, and please be well. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.